I didn't set out to find a lost civilization. My research began, as it often does, in the quiet, dusty archives of history. I was tracing the evolution of military architecture, examining old maps, trying to understand the transition from the medieval castle to the modern fortress. Standard architectural history. Nothing controversial. I learned the familiar story. High walls gave way to lower, thicker ones. Round towers, once formidable, became vulnerable to cannon fire. It was a linear progression, a story of action and reaction, of technology marching forward. But then, buried in the intricate cartography of the 17th and 18th centuries, I stumbled upon a shape that didn't belong, a PRFSCT, geometric star, appearing where no star should be, a crystalline ghost, etched into the landscape. At first, I dismissed it as a cartographer's flourish. But it appeared again, and again, first in Italy, a perfect 9-pointed city, then in Japan, a 5-pointed citadel surrounded by a moat, then, in the middle of America, guarding a harbor. This wasn't an anomaly, it was a pet tyrant. And with that realization, my simple research project fractured, revealing something far deeper and more mysterious beneath. The subject of this investigation is a structure known to history as the Trace Italienne, or more commonly, the Star Fort. To see one is to be struck by its impossible geometry. They are defined by their perfectly symmetrical bastions, angled with a mathematical precision that is both beautiful and unsettling. The walls are immense, often made of earth and reinforced with stone, sloped to deflect cannon fire with an effectiveness that was revolutionary for its time. But it is the scale and the sheer ubiquity of these structures that defy easy explanation. These weren't just forts. Many were immense works of landscape art, requiring the movement of millions of tons of earth, the cutting of stone with unwavering precision, and a mastery of logistics that would strain even modern engineering firms. And they are EVRWHERE, from the coast of South America to the plains of India, from the heart of Europe to the islands of the Caribbean. The same star-shaped ghost appears in the historical record. The question isn't simply what they are. The question is, how is this possible? The standard narrative, the one you will find in any university textbook, tells us these star forts were developed in Renaissance Italy to defend against the new and terrifying power of cannon fire. The angled walls, the bastions, the interlocking fields of fire, they eliminated the blind spots of older castles. They were a brilliant, logical, and necessary military innovation. And this explanation is plausible. It is neat, and it fits a linear view of technological progress. It is plausible, that is, until you look closer. When you look closer, the official explanation begins to collapse under the weight of its own inconsistencies. If these were purely a response to European cannon warfare, why do we find them in places that never saw a significant cannon threat? Why build a fortress designed to withstand a years-long siege in a peaceful colonial port? More troublingly, how did civilizations with supposedly no meaningful contact, like 17th century Europe and feudal Japan, independently develop and build fortresses with the exact same, highly specific, geometric principles? Cultural exchange can explain a style, it cannot explain the verbatim copying of complex mathematical and engineering blueprints across thousands of miles of ocean. And most importantly, if these structures were such a vital and common undertaking, where are the records? Where are the comprehensive engineering plans, the labor contracts, the supply chain logistics, the budgetary discussions, for what would have been the most expensive and labor-intensive projects of their era? The silence in the historical record is deafening. Once you begin looking for the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Take a tour of the globe through the eyes of a 17th century cartographer. You see the perfect city of Palmanova in Italy, a 9-pointed star so mathematically pure it feels otherworldly. You see Bortonge in the Netherlands, a star rising from the water. You see the star of Goryokaku in Hakodate, Japan, built by the Tokugawa shogunate. You see Fort McHenry in Baltimore, America, the very fort that inspired the national anthem. You see the ruins of Almeida in Portugal, a double star of immense complexity. These structures share an undeniable architectural DNA. The angles are too similar. The proportions are too consistent. The underlying logic is ideal. It is as if they were all built from the same master blueprint, a design so effective and so universal that it was implemented across the planet. This is not cultural exchange. This is evidence of a standardized global system. When a global system exists with no official origin, when the evidence on the ground contradicts the written record, we are forced to look at alternative frameworks for understanding. This is where the investigation leads us to the controversial and often misunderstood theory of Tartaria. The hypothesis suggests that these star forts were not independent military outposts built by dozens of disconnected nations. It proposes that they were nodes in a single, worldwide, technologically advanced civilization that has been erased from our history. In this framework, the star forts were its power centers, its administrative hubs, its scientific institutions, perhaps even part of a global energy grid. Let me be clear, we are not treating this as fact. We are using it as a lens, a tool. We are asking, does this framework explain the evidence better than the official narrative? Does the idea of a lost, global civilization make more sense of the impossible similarities and the missing records than the story we have been told? Let us move away from theory and focus on the hard evidence, the physical facts that exist today, independent of any narrative. First, the mathematics. The geometry of the star forts is not simple. Many display principles of fractal geometry, patterns that repeat at different scales. The angles are precise, often aligned with celestial events or cardinal directions with an accuracy that would require sophisticated surveying equipment. This suggests a shared, advanced understanding of mathematics and astronomy that is not accounted for in conventional history. Second, the engineering. The sheer volume of earth moved to create these structures is staggering. We are talking about projects that rival modern airport or highway construction, all supposedly accomplished with shovels, carts, and animal labor. The official story asks us to believe this was done without steam power, without modern machinery, and without leaving a significant paper trail. Where are the decades-long labor logs? Where are the plans for feeding and housing tens of thousands of workers? The engineering on display does not match the supposed technological capability of the era. Third, the location. While many forts are in strategic military positions, many are not. They appear in the middle of nowhere, on plains with no enemy to fight. Some researchers have pointed out that a significant number of star forts are located on what are known as lee lines, or points of high telluric energy. They often incorporate complex water features, moats, and canals that seem far more elaborate than necessary for defense. This raises the question, were they built only for defense? Or were they complex machines with a lost purpose? This leads us to a deeply unsettling question. A question that shifts the entire investigation from architecture to history itself. What if these forts weren't built in the 17th and 18th centuries, but were simply found, reoccupied, and repurposed by the civilizations that came after? In this scenario, the cover-up is not a shadowy conspiracy to hide documents. The cover-up is the act of relabeling, the story of cannon defense becomes a convenient, logical narrative, created to explain these immense, pre-existing structures that were already dotting the landscape. You find a massive, abandoned star-shaped structure. You claim you built it to defend your harbor. You discover a geometrically perfect city. You write a history that attributes its construction to a local duke. The greatest piece of evidence for this is a negative one: the deafening silence in the historical record, the absence of comprehensive plans, of budgets, of labor logs. It is as if history was written after the fact, to claim ownership of a magnificent, unexplained inheritance. The official narrative asks us to believe that hundreds of nearly identical, geometrically perfect fortresses were built all over the world by disconnected cultures for a single military purpose, and that they somehow all forgot to document the largest construction projects in their respective histories. The evidence pattern suggests something else, that we are living amongst the ruins of a unified, global system. A system that understood mathematics, engineering, and perhaps physics at a level we are only just beginning to appreciate. The question then is not whether these forts could stop a cannonball. The question is, what was their original purpose? Why were they all built to the same master plan? And who was the master planner? The Tartarian framework offers one possible answer: that these are the last visible remnants of a civilization that was so completely erased from history that we now call their administrative centers forts, and their technology impossible. Perhaps they weren't built to keep armies out, but to harness a power we have long since forgotten. Perhaps the angled walls were not for defense, but for resonance. Perhaps the moats filled with water were not obstacles, but conductors. We are left with a profound mystery. The structures are real. The pattern is undeniable. The official explanation is insufficient. We are forced to conclude that our history is incomplete. We are looking at puzzle pieces from a box we no longer have the lid for. So, walk through one of these places if you ever get the chance. Stand on the ramparts. Feel the deliberate angles of the earthworks. Observe the impossible symmetry. And ask yourself, does this feel like the work of soldiers with shovels? Or does it feel like the ruin of something far grander? The story isn't over. The investigation has barely begun.